that working with Cathsseta, they normally know that towards the end of the financial year, we would come to them to say a particular employer was not able to implement. We're requesting that you help us, through remedial plans so that we can meet our targets. So this is also due to partnerships that we had with employers. That's why we overachieved. And under bursaries as well, we've overachieved. This was because of the remedial plans as well, and also because of the NSFAS project that we have, where we have partnered with NSFAS just to assist in making sure that, we alleviate the fees must fall issues, and also to ensure that we assist a lot of unemployed learners that are at universities. And under employed learners on bursaries, we overachieved as well with 6 learners. Sorry, we underachieved with 6 learners, and this really came because of the COVID-19. I think from January, normally our bursaries, we report them through around the 4th quarter of the financial year. So a lot of employers came, to say from January to March, they were not able to report those learners due to the fact that they're not at work, or, because of COVID, learners are not able to register. So that's why we were just missing that 6. And as we move right along to program number 3, under learning program still, we have unemployed graduate on internships. Here, we did not perform well as well. And the target was in quarter 4 from January to March. And that's when, COVID was starting and we could not have the 26 learners. We had employers that came at that time that were supposed to implement, saying that they are withdrawing. That's why we could not close this target. And under artisans entering training programs, this program succeeded. And this is, through the remedial plan and partnerships that we have with some of the employers. And under artisan completing training, on this one, we did not report anything, as I have alluded initially regarding the learnerships, that we were implementing our learnerships as artisans. So we have since stopped in the previous financial year, which therefore meant that the learners that we have are only learners that were entering, not completions. And under number of learners on TVET occupation programs, we did not perform well as well there. And this is because of the learners that were supposed to be completing, we were not able to complete them during the last quarter of the financial year. And then as we move along as well under learning programs, TVET learners on work integrated learning, we overachieved with 397. And this is because of the increased partnerships we had with TVET colleges. And we have other learners that were sent to China, which augmented our target. They went to China to do some work integrated learning there for 12 months. So we have included them on this particular target. And then we have the university learners entering workplace experience. We have and we underachieved on this one due to COVID-19 as well. If as you can see, anything that has, universities and TVET colleges, we could not meet some of the targets. And this was just towards the end of the financial year because universities and TVET colleges at that time were not functional. So we were not able to get required documents for us to be able to report the learners. And on the RPL, we had a target of 16 and we were not able to report. And this really was the fact that we advertised, I think, 2 times and we did not get suitable people who would be able to assist us in implementing this particular program on the particular interventions that we wanted to do. And under learning programs, again, on learners accessing or completing IET, we did not achieve this target. We had a deviation of about 20, and this was as a result as well of the fact that we did not have enough people applying. So the people that applied started the program late. That's why we could not meet the target. So I am not going to talk about the rest under increased support sector organization through skills development because we have met the target on those one. Even under labor unions, we have met the target. And under special projects, number of youth development projects implemented, we overachieved with one, and this is as a result of the increased youth programs that we had as Cathsseta, and it saw us increasing with 1%. And I'm not also going to talk about rural projects. We have met the target without issues there. And also, as we're moving to program 3, under monitoring reports and regional offices, we have met the target. As you may know, Cathsseta had about 6 regions opened to make sure that, you know, we are next to our stakeholders. So that's why we're able to meet that target. And as we move again under learning programs and projects, under career guidance, we have met the target of 20. And as I move also under improve the capacity of TVET colleges to deliver skills development, number of TVET lecturers and support staff entering development program. The target could not be achieved because of the fact that we did not have TVET college, you know, that applied when we advertised. Also, we had to divert and make sure that we get a training provider that will be able to assist us to train the TVET lecturers. In that regard as well, we were not able to close that through because of some glitches that we had with the SCM processes. And because we were not able to enter the TVET colleges lecturers, it means also we're not able to complete the learners. That's why we are on 0 under that. And also, as we move right along, like I said, where we don't have variance, I will not be talking much on those. If we can move to page 21, which is slide 21, I think, under quality assurance. Under quality assurance, review qualification for sector appropriateness. We're supposed to report about 10 and we reported 19. And on this is because when we were reviewing the qualifications, the industry identified part qualifications that now increase the scope, and we had to also report the 9 part qualifications that we identified after we did the review. And I'm just going to talk about the summary of the variance that we have. Overachievements really came from the fact that we had the Chinese culture exchange for the TVET World Program, and we also had increased learner registration for some of our programs, and also the completions were as a result of learners that came in the previous financial year. And also under mandatory grant, it is through the increased demand of that participated on our program. And the underachievement, as I have alluded before, most of them, you know, was due to the fact or due to the COVID-19 pandemic that affected most of our Q4 reporting. And this has also hugely contributed to the decline in overall performance of the CETA, as most of our targets could not be met, especially in Q3 and Q4 of the financial year. I am done now with the performance of the organization in the prior year. I will be taking you through now the governance of Cathsseta. As we may all know that the previous board finished their tenure on the 31st of March, and the new board that the chairperson has just introduced, they were appointed effective on 1st April 2022. And the following subcommittees were appointed. We have a board exco, we have audit and risk committee, we have finance committee, we have remuneration committee, we have governance and strategy committee, and audit and risk committee. Appointment of ARC, on the appointment of ARC, outsourced internal audit firm, and that internal audit firm is overseeing audit processes within Cathsseta, and they are strengthening the core element of corporate governance at Cathsseta. With that said, that's my last slide. Thank you, Chairperson. Oh, my colleague, Mr. Shirinda, will be taking you through the annual, the finances, sorry, the audited financial statements. Thank you.
Um, Morning, everyone, and to all the stakeholders. My name is Wisan Shirinda. I'm the current acting chief financial officer for Cathsseta. I'll be taking you through the audited financial statements for the 2019-2020 financial year. I will start with a little bit of background in terms of you to understand what we are presenting in front of you. The financial statements have been rounded off to the nearest thousand, which means if I present 1 million, you will see the number as 1,000. Um, the comparatives figures have been restated to cater for the correction of errors that were identified in the current financial year. Um, the, the prepared annual financial statements have been prepared according to GRAP. And again, it's on an accrual basis, which is consistent with previous financial years. All accounting policies remain unchanged. The general expenses note have been reviewed for fair presentation. The commitment register relates to all contracts that are valid, and then the contracts that have expired, terminated, closed are listed as contingencies. For you to understand the numbers that I'm going to present, I think I'll take you through on high level the regulation that we present the financial figures in terms of the grant regulation as well. So in terms of the grant regulation, as you may be aware, our revenue is driven from skills development levy, which is 1% of monthly wages and salaries. Of what we receive from skills development levy, 20% goes to National Skills Fund, and the remaining 80% comes to Cathsseta. And then from what the 80% that comes to Cathsseta, 10.5% goes for administration expenses, and then 20% goes for mandatory grant. 49.5% goes towards discretionary grants or projects. For the 49.5% that goes towards the discretionary grants, the allocation is as follows. Um, the 7.5 goes towards the project admin expenses. It means that when we spend towards project admin expenses, we must not exceed that 7.5, and then 80% goes towards pivotal projects, and 20% goes towards the non-pivotal projects. I'll start with the statement of comprehensive income. This is what is known as income statement for those who have done accounting in the earlier days. In explaining the movements within the statement of comprehensive income, revenue for the year is 442 million. The budgeted revenue was 462 million. Included within the 442 million is 37 million, which came from interest, penalties, and other income. In total, our expenses were 368 million, up against the budgeted 369 million. The expenses have been spent as follows. Going towards discretionary grant, we spent 233 million versus the budgeted 229 million. And then going towards mandatory grant, we underspent by spending 57 million versus the 92 million that was budgeted. And then going towards the admin expenses, which is the 10.5, we overspent by spending 77.5 million versus the 48.5 million that was budgeted. Overall, this leads to a surplus of 74 million for the current financial year of 2019-2020, of which about 54 million is mainly coming from the mandatory grant surplus. I'm gonna go to the statement of changes in net asset and just explain some of the important line items there. Within our net asset total at the end of the financial year equals to 412 million, of which 401 million relates to discretionary grant, and 10 million relates to the admin reserves. We have appropriated reserves in a total of 19 million from the other reserves going towards discretionary grant. 23 million, which was a deficit, came from the admin expenses, and the 44 million, which was a surplus, came from mandatory grant. Another item to note within the statement of changes in net asset, you will note a correction of error that was done on the 2019 closing balance, totaling 2.5. This was as a result of prior period error correction that relates to property, plant and equipment, and intangible asset. On the statement of financial position, I'm just gonna take you through few line items that had significant variances. The first line item that had a significant variance is the cash and cash equivalent. We have a closing balance of 436 million, which is an increase of 62 million from the 2019 financial year. Main reason was as a result of surplus that we have in the current financial year. On the line item of intangible asset, there is an increase by about 8 million. That is as a result of additions that we have on the ERP development. Payable from non-exchange transaction reduced significantly. The main reason is that towards the end of March, there was less activity on the spend relating to expenses. As such, there were less expenses that needed accrual at the end of the financial year. The next line is statement of is the cash flow statement. Again, within the cash flow statement, I'm just gonna highlight some of the important line items there. We have received 441 million, which is cash received from operations. This will be mainly like your levies. And then again, we have paid out to suppliers and employees a total of 380 million. That is on an actual cash flow. And then from investing activities, that is on buying or selling of assets. We have spent 8.9 million mainly due to the investment in the ERP system. And then our net cash flow increase is 51.5 million. The next statement is the statement of comparison of budget and actual. Within the statement of the variances within the statement of actual versus budget are as follows. On other income, the main reason for the variance was as a result of proceeds on the sale of assets and additional income that we received from the Cathsseta for training. The next line item, which had a significant movement, significant variance, is the retention of surplus, which is what was approved in the previous financial year by the National Treasury. Line number 3 and number 4 relate to intangible assets, where we had the write-off and an impairment as a result of some of the assets that were not being used as initially intended. And then on the under finance cost, we have incurred penalties and interest as a result of late payment to SARS that increase our finance costs. Within the DG and within the employer grant and project expenses, we had some of the significant strikes that also slowed down the payment of some of the DG expenses. Under general expenses, as you may be aware, we've been having a challenge in balancing out the 10.5 administration expenses due to some of the headcounts, which are fixed cost in nature, that are structural and have been part of us since sometime around 2016, if I'm not mistaken. The next slide is mainly just to indicate to you our closing balance with regard to our commitment on the discretionary grant. We had a closing balance of 119 million. This slide is on irregular expenditure, it's on irregular expenditure. Within our irregular expenditure, we have a closing balance of 58 million. The significant movement on the irregular expenditure came as a result of the exceeding of the 7.5 discretionary grant expenditure. This line item in the past was not treated as an irregular expenditure. However, in the current financial year, following a finding that was raised by AG, this has been treated as an irregular expenditure. So in the 2020 financial year, we exceeded the 7.5 by 7.7 million. And in the past, that is 2019, going back to 2016, we exceeded the 7.7 by about 40 million. So that adds to our irregular expenditure by about 48 million in the current financial year. In the current financial year, there's an additional irregular expenditure of about 611,000 that relates to contravention of PFMA that has been incurred as irregular expenditure in addition to the 48 million. Next item is on fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The main reason for the increase on fruitless and on wasteful expenditure was due to the write-off of some of the intangible assets that were acquired in the past and are currently not being fully utilized or utilized in the current financial year. As such, they had to be written off. Another significant item that I need to draw your attention to on the financial statements is with regard to contingencies. We have two contingent liabilities. One relates to the matter between Business Unity South Africa and the Minister of Education and the National Skill Authority and National Skills Fund, where there's currently a dispute. The other item relates to a contract dispute between Cathsseta and Marara Event, currently valued at 420 million. That is currently going through litigation. We also have a contingency with regard to retention of surplus. At year end, we had a surplus of 395 million. As you are aware, we need to apply to National Treasury for us to retain this surplus. We are disclosing this as a contingency because at the end of the financial year, we didn't have an approval to retain the surplus. However, last week they've since responded to us and they've allowed us to retain the surplus of 395 million. Another significant item that I need to bring to your attention, it's with regard to events after balance sheet. We are required to go and assess of events after the reporting period, that is after the 31st of March, that may have an impact on the financial statement. And one such event was the announcement by the president with regard to the relief on the skills development levy for 3 months, starting from May to August. This was going to have a significant impact on our collection of revenue. As such, we had to do a going concern assessment to assess the impact of that announcement. And I'm pleased to report to you that for Cathsseta, we report that Cathsseta, despite such an announcement, was regarded as a going concern, an entity that is solvent and liquid. My last slide is to present to you the current audit opinion. I've also included opinions from the past financial years for your information. In the current financial year, our audit opinion is an unqualified opinion with findings. Thank you.
Thank you, acting CEO and acting CFO. Somebody was saying, does it mean Cathsseta is Hollywood or competing with Hollywood? We're working on this. As I indicated, the CEO is assuming duty today. So the acting on the CEO part is gone. And we are indeed working on the appointment of the CFO as soon as the CEO gets into the office. Maybe it is proper at this stage to thank the previous board and thank the previous CEO, Ms. Libaka, for the work that they did to drive and to direct the ship to especially what the acting CFO just announced now on an unqualified audit with findings. And we know now that that's been for the fourth consecutive year. It's no mean feat, but obviously it puts a challenge on the current board and the incoming CEO to actually show a step ahead. Maybe 4 years at one space has been enough now. We must move on to the next level. And that's where we set our eyes. I've been taking stock of the questions, and questions are coming in, but not at the pace and the rate that we are expecting. So we're gonna invite stakeholders to please send their questions via the chat, because we will not be able to take questions directly. We will only respond to those that will have been written in. And I have also, in order to give stakeholders time to write the questions on, to moved on to say maybe we should take the presentation of the strategic plan and annual performance plan now before we do the questions and answers. So we're gonna ask Mr. Thulaganya Gaushubele to make the presentation, which will be beamed on the screen. And sadly, he's not able to be with us here. And we hope that presenting from virtually is not gonna present challenges for us. Thank you. So over to you, Mr. Gaushubele.
We cannot hear him, he's muted.
Mr. Gausubel, could you please check if you're muted? We can see your lips, but we can't hear your voice. And lip reading is not really an easy art.
Oh, no, absolutely. I was muted. My apologies. We need the 4IR. We need the 4IR very soon. Maybe when we get to that point, we'll then be able to deal with it and see the importance of that. Thank you so much, Chair. Chair, I was saying, thank you, the chairperson of the session. Thank you, the chairperson of the board, the accounting authority members, the Cathsseta management, as well as the other relevant important stakeholders that we have. I'm saying we'll try and complement exactly what we just heard currently. We would get to those particular points and see where this 10.5% has really taken us. Let us just, without wasting time, and I hope that the IT guys will be able to work with me very quickly. I want to move to slide number 2, as it were. On the strategic review process, what informed that review? You know, I mean, some of the things that we had to consider was the role of the Cathsseta in the developmental state. We all know, and we are aware of the issues of the developmental state, that by its definition, government will put some resources. What happens to those resources? We have vis-a-vis the mandate that we've had post or pre-COVID-19, what has been the impact of the COVID in the current sector? What our performance, you know, I mean, we know that in 2018, we did very well, but going forward in terms of the resources, what's going to happen, impact on the skills development programs, the organizational realignment, which, you know, talks to the issues of the 10.5%, which, I mean, has impacted in one way or the other, the issues of the service delivery, the issues of retrenchments in this time. And I know that the Cathsseta has been under tremendous pressure to deal with some of these issues because it's been seen as this Cathsseta that is unforgiving, that doesn't understand the current situation, and so forth. But we've been compelled to be able to deal with the issues of the realignment. There's implication of the annual performance and so forth. Can you move with me to slide number 3? I will just take you through the outline in terms of how we're going to move. We'll go to the situational analysis, strategic alignment, go to the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, we'll go to DHET alignment and SSP strategic priorities. If you take us again to slide number 4, we talks about situational analysis, what informed that particular thing. As the Cathsseta, and I must really appreciate the members of the Cathsseta, especially the accounting authority, because they've been seized with nothing but with the work of the Cathsseta as it relates, you know, to the landscape and to the extent that it talks to the mandate of the Cathsseta. And in developing this theory of change, we had to conduct this situational analysis, which we had to look at a number of things. We looked at the stakeholder analysis. What does the stakeholder really want? What does the SSP research agenda tells us? And thank you very much to our researchers. We would, of course, get to the issue of SWOT analysis, get to PESTEL, and both to say, where are we? Now, we move to this theory of change. I mean, these are some of the 5 things that we really have identified. We're going to talk about the inputs. Once you put those things in, what are the activities that are needed? What will be the outputs? What are the outcomes and impacts? And all these things must be understood within the context of the current normal that we're having, to say, how do we move in this particular conjuncture? If we move to slide number 6, we will then go to the theory of change. We looked at the issue of the response to COVID-19. We now know at this point, as we are seated here, that the Eastern Cape has already declared a second wave, to say it's been hitting them and stuff and all that. And to what extent will this then be able to impact our APPs as well as our 5-year plan? How do we move? And are we hoping that, together with the stakeholders, would be able to address and deal with some of these critical issues as it were. We would have the integration of the ICT and digital economy research to say how do we deal with that in the current climate and so forth. We also need to look at on the issues of the fourth industrial revolution. With me, let us just go to slide number 7, which is about community, to say our profile where we get. I hope, because I'm not too sure, this thing comes up and out, up and down. I'm not too sure. I hope that we are together, because I'm not too sure what's happening with this network. We'll look at the economic sector profile, what sports, recreation, and fitness makes up to, what happens. We have heard also there are challenges, the issues of BUSA, this and that and the other. How is this going in the context of that? How is it going to be able to relate? We move to, if you move with me to slide number 8, that talks about situational analysis, key skills issues. We're talking about the issues which are the change drivers affecting skills demand. A few days ago that there's been a banning of cars, there's been banning of trucks, and how does that really relate to us? And how do we then, in a developmental state, be able to assist and make sure that everybody else is then able to get to a point where they say they are skilled enough, then they'll be able to deal with other issues as driving and stuff and all that. But we need to understand all these things within this global pandemic, of COVID-19, the fourth industrial revolution. How do we get that? Because the reality is, in as far as COVID-19 has fast-tracked the issue of the fourth industrial revolution, the most affected becomes the people in the rural area. So we identified all those change drivers, which is technology, globalization, and green economy. And as the accounting authority, of course, we have been seized with these responsibilities to say, how do we then bring this thing to the human face? Because you really need to give this, all these things that we're talking about, we must give a human face at the end of the day. We have the strategic focus of the Cathsseta. How does it relate? I mean, our vision, our mission relate, pre-COVID, as well as, post-COVID. I mean, our vision there, so what is it that we need to achieve? What kind of leaders do we want? How do we assist these, and how do we participate towards the NDP 2030? What is the approach and so forth? If you move with me, we would also go to slide number 10. On the NDP alignment, we look at issues to say, these are the NDP themes. We need to give meaning to what these themes are all about. And what is the role of the Cathsseta? Okay, we're saying let's just shake the first bullet point that talks about support credible skills development initiatives aimed at achieving the NDP goals and NSP outcomes. You look at that, it says, lay a solid foundation for a long and healthy life and higher educational and scientific achievements. We need to achieve these things. We need to align, because, going into the NDP to say, we've got this document that's called the NDP, we've got the mandate of the CETA pre-COVID and post-COVID, and how do we then do that? How do we support the TVET College, to ensure that they produce the kind of students that we really want, the kind of learners that we want? How do we then empower the lecturers to be able to give us exactly what we want? And taking into the issues of the fourth industrial revolution and so forth and whatnot. Because what is important, in as much as we want to expand the production, we really need to build a capacity as well. If you move with me to slide number 11, it says you've got DHET and NSDP outcomes, which are linked to our priorities. What are the priorities? What informs our priorities? Because we do not exist in a vacuum. We've got the Cathsseta linked priorities, which is the fourth industrial revolution, as you saw there, our situational analysis. We've got analysis of skills, what kind of skill do we want, monitoring and evaluation. What is the reality on the ground? How do we balance that? Because as the authority, accounting authority will forever be judged on the basis of what we would have delivered. But for us to be able to deliver, we need certain things put in place and our resources and so forth. We've got the NSDP. If we take just one or two, outcome one is that we must identify and increase production of occupations in high demand. How do you do with that without commands? And we believe that the stakeholders that are here do really understand and get to say, this is where we are. These are the things that we need to do. Regardless of whether there's pandemic or not, we really need to move and plan and say, how do we then deal with these particular issues? They've got expanded access to opportunities, improve success and efficiency of the PSET, or improve a responsive PSET system. And maybe just take outcome number 3, say improving the level of skills in the South African context, workforce. How do we do this thing in a developmental state? What is it that is required for us to do that? How do we get, communities, employers, as well as labor to be able to produce exactly what we are going to buy and get into? So we move to slide number 12, the Economic Recovery Plan 2020. We know that the Moody's and everybody else, they have downgraded the economy, and unfortunately, COVID-19 hit us. And when COVID-19 hit us, we had other plans. We needed to do some of the things. Unfortunately, we could not because of that. With a stagnant economy for a long period, what do we need to do? Realistically speaking, do we expand? Do we move with the or do we sell our people dreams? Or do we really focus and see it as a city? And I think as this authority would said, these are the things that we really need to do. And the South African Economic Reconstruction of the Recovery Plan, we identified that it's got about 3 phases, which is engage and preserve, which of course would include a comprehensive health response so that we save lives and cut the spread of the pandemic, recovery and reform, which includes interventions to restore the economy, while controlling the health risk. And lastly, we need to reconstruct and transform, which entails building a sustainable, resilient, and inclusive economy. But when we transform, what does that really mean? Because transformation and reconstruction as well, we must always remember, it talks to the issues of the organizational realignment and so forth, which is never easy in the times that we're living in. If you move with me to slide number 13, Chair, we continue with the issues of the recovery plan for 2020. We've got strategic priorities, which is skills intervention for the Cathsseta. In terms of the aggressive infrastructure investment, what do we really need to do? And I always harp on this particular point to say, whatever is here, beautiful as these plans are, it must be understood within 2 things, within these COVID, but also within the resources that we are able to allocate to these particular things to do. Look at the employment-oriented strategic localization, reindustrialization and export promotion, the issue of the energy security. How do we get to that point? How do we then explore and exploit all those energy securities and so forth? And mass public employment intervention. How do we do the mass public employment in the times that we live in? If my IT can move with me to slide number 14, strategic focus as amended. We've got measures to support the national strategies and plans. We've got the drive to support sector strategies and plans is embedded in the Cathsseta, of course, SSP and SP, and the 6 subsector strategies. They are all mentioned down there, and we definitely know that we'll be sharing this document with yourselves. And they need to be implemented through partnerships. We've been emphasizing on the issues of stakeholders, but we need to do this, of course, within the national departments that fall within this particular economic sector. What are the things that ought to be done? How do we then move going forward? Strategic focus, as I mentioned, to say, we had to change. There are a number of things that we needed to do a year ago that are not relevant today. Then we need to move. We look at the Mzansi golden economy. How do we get there? How do we empower and skill and reskill these people within this developmental state that we have? How do we move in terms of the national tourism sector strategy and so forth? How do we, then we move to the slide number 15. If you are to move with me, please, IT. We've got pestle analysis. We're saying there are a number of issues that influence all the issues that we're dealing with. We've got political factors that we must focus on, economic factors, social factors, technological factors, environmental factors, and legal factors. These are not easy factors that we need to. But when you look at political factors, Cathsseta re-established for 10 years ago. The good thing is that the governance committee, I think the strategy met a few weeks ago just to deliberate on these issues, to say, where are we on these issues, to say, where are we, what is it that we need to do, what is it, is there any impediment in terms of the legislation, how to deal with issues, and so forth. We've got economic factors, which the economy is very slow in terms of growing. What do we need to do? How do we deal with that? Unemployment is very ripe and high. What is it that we need to do? Can we think out of the box and be able to deal with some of these issues? These are the issues that have been seized with, that we, as the authority, we had to analyze and get to understand. What does the meaning of, what is green economy? How do our beautiful stakeholders contribute to the issues of the green economy, issues of the fourth industrial revolution? How do we then, that to the extent that it affects in the main, your rural population, so that we are then able to assist in going forward? If you move with me, IT, to slide number 16, we also looked at the SWOT analysis. We have been, sometimes we even think that, we're saving this, we've been having so many meetings in terms of rearranging and getting everything to work. And to that extent, we really think the accounting authorities. But we look at the issues of strength, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. We look at what is it that we need to do? How do we increase the number of training providers within the context of what we have within the budget and everything that we have? We look at that, we said, we've got strength branding, work readiness program, increased Cathsseta visibility in the rural areas. But this Cathsseta visibility in rural areas must be accompanied and be supported by the programs, that talks to the issues of OIR and so forth, the issues of TVET colleges, the issues of teaching, helping lecturers. What are the weaknesses? It's, of course, funding from a levies perspective, but also the issue of BUSA has got, some of those particular things that might deal with us. Opportunities, we need to improve revenue generation, we need to improve on qualifications, increase rural footprints, e-learning, and so forth. What are the threats? We've got funding and legislation problems, skills mismatch. We've got all issues, which talks about the issues of the organizational realignment. When you look at all those issues, then it becomes a problem to say, our SWOT analysis, how do we deal? And it's important that we share with the stakeholders these important issues of strength, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats, so that they get to understand and they'll be able to say probably, if there were other issues that they could not really relate to us, and come back and say, these are the issues that we need to deal with. This is what we do when we talk about labor relations. This is what we talk about reduced revenue and levies. How do we approach? If you go with me, IT, to slide number 17, it's a strategic plan measuring our performance. Of course, our income indicator targets were revised to reflect COVID-19, which we have done. We have been talking about it. We've said this is what we need to achieve, and how do we then deal with these issues? But we've addressed some of these issues because we've been very present in the Cathsseta landscape. One of the challenges, of course, would have been the baseline target is that the NSDS 3 had different priorities or outcomes from NSDP. Now, when you are there as an authority, the question is, how do you then deal with those targets? How do you reconcile the NSDS 3 with the outcomes from NSDP? And not all current, of course, were measured and prioritized by NSDP.
Mr.
With me.
Could I please ask you to try and wrap up in the next 3 to 5 minutes, please, so that we do not take away time.
I'll be done in the
questions.
next 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll be done in the next 3 minutes. Chair. Strategic planning, our performance have amended. We've got an impact statement, a transformed growing sector, providing skills responsive to the needs of the South African economy. Okay, that's our, we had so many impact statements, but we met as the authority and we said, we need to reduce the impact statement as it were, and that's where it read. If you move with me to slide number 20, we talk of strategic plan, measuring our performance, updated outcomes. We talk about, we've got outcomes, outcome indicator. What is it that we need to do? How do we then measure the targets? What are the targets? How do we achieve the targets? We've been seized with that particular matters. Then you move to the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, which is a compliance matter. So say, how do we then comply with the framework as it were? How do we comply with the framework, as it required? Then we move, if you move with me to slide number 22, IT. And the most important thing is the paradigm shift going forward is that how do we move forward? Because we are focused on impact, outcomes, outputs. So remember the pyramid that we showed much earlier, and we are expected to identify outcomes we want to achieve at an institutional level. The department will submit drafts on SP, APP, annual, on, and for us, what is important is that how do we then shift from old to new? And importantly, as I conclude, Chair, what is important for us is that we need to then be able to say, how do we work within the confinements of the budget, the budget constraints that we have? I thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson of GNS. Colleagues, comrades, and compatriots, this brings us to the end of the presentations. And it is this stage that we then look into the address of the questions that have been raised. And I'm going to request the acting CO and CFO to come up to then take the questions that have been fielded. We've noticed that most of the questions are around the ERP for performance. CO, if you could please lead on the questions that relate to the performance information on your side. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to request Poshi to read out the questions for us to be able to respond to them.
Good morning, stakeholders and colleagues. The first question is from Nomvuyo Mulefe. It says, thank you for this opportunity. I have a lot of issues from change structures to management structures, etc. But I will post one issue, DAJO LMS. Problem of incompetent or ignorant DAJO team. Never mind their rudeness when one interacts with them. They don't understand training systems and processes. As a result, A, providers are struggling to work on the system to register learners, assessors, and moderators. Then the other question is also related to the new system, is from Tsepiso Tunzi. And then we also have Simone. You mentioned that the CETA did communicate with all applicants regarding the discretionary grant applications. However, we did not receive any feedback regarding this matter. Kindly confirm when this communication was distributed. The other question from Matthew Lambert, he's representing International Hotel School and Summit Training. A question relating to the API that will affect 2020-2021 API, the ERP system. The ERP system is creating significant challenges for providers on a number of elements across processes and actual system inputs. The question says, what is the plan to address this with providers? Then the other question again from Nomvuyo Mulefi says, task allocations are not properly channeled to the relevant E2Q8 team members. Okay,
Okay.
maybe you can respond to
Yes,
those
let
and
me
then
take
I'll
the five
read others.
questions. I will start with the question from Ms. Nomvuyo about the change of structure and the rootness of the training provider, of the Dejo service provider. We as Cathsseta do apologize if you encountered a rudeness, maybe Dajo being rude to you. And we did not have anything coming to us, from you to say there is a complaint that Dajo has been rude to you. We will take that matter forward as Cathsseta and speak to them as our service provider, and to make sure that, we treat our stakeholders with respect, as it is one of our values at Cathsseta. And I think most of the questions are regarding the ERP. I'm just going to sum them up. From Simone, from Tsepiso, from Matthew. I think Matthew's one is different. And Menomvuyo again about the tasks that are not distributed accordingly to Cathsseta staff. We have acknowledged as Cathsseta that this is a new system and it will have, teething problems. And we wanted to implement the system, and the system has been implemented, is functional. We have training providers that has used the system. We've got stats that shows that learners have been registered, and we have been certificating where we can. However, what we're doing right now, we are redeveloping, we are enhancing the system where there are challenges, where we have training providers that came to us to say the system has issues. We have contacted the service provider. We are working tirelessly with them to make sure that we remove some of the obstacles that were hindering the implementation or hindering providers to use the system. So we are, now on the maintenance and support. And in that stage, as Cathsseta, we are trying to redefine the processes that we implemented on the system. So, for instance, there was an issue on declaration of or registration of training providers on the system. We have now started working on that particular module to make sure that we ease the process of registering. So we will be taking, our stakeholders through training with the changes that we're working on. And the changes that we're working on really comes from the comments that we receive from our training providers. I think this was just in relation to Tsepiso and Menomvuyo. And Simone is talking about the fact that she did not receive any rejection. I'm not sure if it's rejection for the previous financial year, which is 2019, or this financial year. For the 2019, I know for sure we have distributed both acceptance letters and rejection letters. So if you have not received it, we will take your details and we will give you for the previous financial year. And for the current financial year, I know because of the COVID-19, really, as Cathsseta, we started working or finalizing our evaluation now in Q3. We are busy distributing the rejections. We have given our providers the allocation letters for those that were successful. For those that were not successful, we're still busy trying to facilitate the rejection letters. But we will take your information and we will make sure that you do get your response. And the question that comes from Matthew from Hotel School, and also on this one, I'm not sure if you're talking about the previous financial year or this current financial year. On the current financial year, which is 2020-2021 allocation, as you may know that Cathsseta has been hit hard by COVID-19. We had to reduce our target significantly. Our revenue as well has decreased, from where it was. We have a reduction of about 35%, which therefore means that we had to make sure that we reduce our targets. So what we had advertised, in last year around October, December, is not what we're going to be implementing because of the pandemic and, the fact that most of the establishments, some have been closed, some have people You know, on some, we're not even able to place our learners because some of the establishments has reduced their staff complement. So that there is an issue there that we are faced with as Cathsseta. Thank you. Can we go to the next set of questions?
Okay, I'll just acknowledge the names. Ronel Nell and Onika Mokavoli are also asking about the system, but you've already answered the questions. So I just wanted to acknowledge them. Then we have Giselle Morrison from Amatemba Skills. She's also concerned about the system and the fact that they are not able to load the learners and their achievements. And there was a mention that people are gonna go bankrupt because of the delayed learner registration and achievements. And the question that what is Cathsseta intending to do with the situation, with the system issue? Then you've responded to Matthew Lambert about the DG allocation. Then we have another question from Kashifa Abrahams. Again, it is about the system. She says the SIMS system provides many challenges and is time consuming. Simple processes takes a number of days to conclude as us providers are back and forth between Cathsseta employees and DAJO technicians. Turnaround time to resolve issues raised with DAJO is way too long. It again speaks to what you've already addressed. Then we have Tlantama Josie, again, it is about the systems. She also says that we have been completely miserable for the past 3 years. It looks like the ETQA department is struggling or they don't have the competence to manage learner documents and the system. And then we have Zakia. As a provider, I would like to join my fellow providers and ask the board, what is the plan going forward in relation to solving the numerous functionality issues with SIMS? It is not a user-friendly system. There are constant delays and very long, arduous processes that practically are burdensome on training providers and indeed at the administration team of Cathsseta. Let me just scroll down. I believe this will lead to a lot more delays until the whole system collapses. We need urgent intervention. Then we have Lebu from NDS Chefs Academy. Can someone address the issue regarding historic learners that were loaded on the system from 2018, and to date we don't have confirmation if all is well with the students to be certified? In the new system, we have been battling with loading the unit standards. Thus, in turn, we're unable to close up a training program with the client, and this is reflecting so bad to the client. We haven't been able to issue statement of results since last year, November. Can someone assist in terms of closing projects ran for private students? To date, we are not able to get certificates on students who completed NC Professional Cookery in 2018. All documents have been submitted and students have been achieved and moderated, just as we do for Cathsseta funded projects. Stephen Quinn from Sun International says, what is Cathsseta's plan to resolve the problems with SIMS as it is having a negative and financial impact on organization? After 3 months, we still have not been able to finish registration of learners on the system, and we have had limited or no support with these problems. However, as we signed contracts of employment with unemployed learners, we now have to pay them. Okay, I won't finish, it's long, it's also about the system. Then we have Tsepiso Tunzi, again from NDS Academy. It's also about the DAJO system, the turnaround times, sorry. One initiates DOI and ends up expiring without them fixing a problem. Loading learners as well as loading learners is as well a challenge. They don't respond to emails. We're struggling to work on the system. We have outstanding certificates. I'm just browsing, there's about 7 questions. Retrieving historical learners on our profile is a mission. This is time consuming. I suggest they give rights to Cathsseta employees to assist stakeholders. Then Debuhosi Tatu, should I continue or?
Yeah, I think you can continue because
Okay,
I
it's
think
been
most of them
about the system.
are about the system.
Okay. Debuhosi Tatu says, I would like to raise the intellectual property issues, please, which I think Cathsseta has not even begun to comprehend the vitality of the subject matter. Carol N. Keynes, given the issues around COVID, businesses closed for long periods, retrenchments and the like, what is anticipated for the upcoming ATRs as few, if any, businesses will have achieved plans submitted in 2019, 2020? Can I let you answer that?
Can you rephrase
Okay.
the Carol N one?
Okay. Given the issues around COVID, businesses closed for long periods, retrenchments and the like, what is the anticipated for the upcoming ATRs as few, if any, businesses will have achieved plans submitted in 2019, 2020? Can I?
Okay. Thank you, Poshi. Chairperson, if you may just allow me, I think most of the questions were on the same system, and I don't think I will be able to go to each and every one of the questions received. But all I can say is that we have procured a system as Cathsseta, we have implemented it, and it is functional. However, we have identified that yes, there are serious problems that are hindering the progress of our training providers and our partner employers to register learners or to certificate learners. Like I have said initially, that we are now trying to refine the system, to redevelop, and make sure that the system is user-friendly. We are removing some of the modules that were on the system. We have done change requests with the training providers. And like I had said, most of our training providers, I recognize a lot of them who came to Cathsseta and say, this functionality is taking forever. Is it really necessary? Where it's necessary, we're going to still have them, because as a CETA as well, we used to have a system that was not automated. And the reason we wanted a new system was to make sure that we automate everything for ease of audits, for ease of us reporting to different channels that we're reporting to. So where we're supposed to have information, we're going to remain with those functionality. But we are reducing or removing most of them, and this came from our stakeholders who would use the system and come back to us and say, this particular portion of the system is not functional, we really don't know how to use it, or it's not necessary. We are refining the system right now. We are redeveloping where it's possible to make sure that the system is user-friendly. And I think under Carol N, regarding the ATRs, as a CETA, as you may know, that we are in existence because of the 1% that we receive from SARS. And really, if a lot of establishments are not functional, this is going to hit Cathsseta very hard. We will not be able to disperse any funding. Even in this current financial year, we did advertise, evaluated, a lot of employers applied and they met the criteria. When we were supposed to receive funding from DHED and SARS, we were not able to receive because employers were not able to contribute. I think nobody knows, where this pandemic is going to lead us, where we don't know if we'll be able to pay our mandatory grants to our employers. But I think because mandatory grants are mandatory for employers that have contributed, if the employer has contributed, we will be able to pay them back their money for training that they have implemented. But if employer couldn't, they couldn't contribute to SARS, we will therefore, as well as Cathsseta, not be able to provide them or pay them their levies. And then there was a question about, from Tlantla as well, about the past 3 years that the system has been, giving us problems. I think we stopped using the previous system last year. And that previous system, we had it since 2003 as Cathsseta. So we acknowledge that there is a lot of data that we needed to migrate into the new system, and we are busy cleaning it up. And I think also Tebogo Sitato also spoke about intellectual property. I'm not sure if it's intellectual property in terms of the data that is on the system, or the training that, you would want us to implement with you. I'm not clear on that one.
Yes,
But,
can I articulate those, Lebo, if you don't mind? So important.
Can you
Through
just
you,
put
Chair.
it in
Through you,
writing?
Chair.
Or it's fine? Yes, sir. Teboho? Okay. Yes. Poshi, you can continue. But in a nutshell, Chairperson, what I'm saying is, I think a lot of our stakeholders are complaining about the same system. And what we're saying as Cathsseta is that we acknowledge all the problems that our stakeholders are bringing forth, and we are making sure right now that we're enhancing the system. We wanted to, because we had procured the system, we needed to use it and identify those challenges. We are now at a stage where we're refining, we're redeveloping, removing things that we think are not necessary, things that we're thinking are hindering, the progress of Cathsseta, or even the progress of our stakeholders. Thank you. Do we still have some more questions?
Yes, I have a question on the financials from Carol N. Keynes. On the financials, with the restructuring, is Cathsseta on track to keep within the 10.5 for admin costs going forward?
Thank you. I think the answer is no, and the main reason that is contributing towards that is that despite us having reduced some of the cost by about 40% or so, there's a significant drop in revenue, which means we still remain with higher significant fixed cost versus the revenue that we are currently earning at the moment. So for us to get out of the 10.5, it means we gradually need to have more levies being received as a SETA versus the current fixed costs that we have. So it's a challenge of revenue that we have versus the fixed cost. If revenue reduces, and then it takes us out back to that issue that we have of the 10.5. So the answer is currently we're not out of the hood with regard to the 10.5. Thank you. Oh yeah, but the challenge has been reduced.
Any more questions? We are currently working on with change request. It's something that we are busy redefining right now. So we will, improve as in when we implement, or as in when we use the system. So under DOI already, there was a challenge. We have sent the change request. I will not, talk about all of them, but I think also what we're going to do, we're going to have stakeholder engagements or training again to our stakeholders to say, from the issues that you've raised, this is what we've removed on the system. This is what we still wanted on the system for reporting purposes for Cathsseta. And I'm thinking between now and March next year, the system will be more functional. It will be better than how it is right now.
Sorry, Acting CEO. Lebu had asked about the historic learners. So she wants an answer about the historic learners and certificate for private students.
For private students, I think it's industry funded, and I think it's the challenge of all the people that raised questions. For those learners, we are busy certificating learners that came from the previous system with all their unit standards. That is happening, and we have even augmented the ETQA team to make sure that we are certificating as many learners as possible. And where we don't have necessary supporting documents from previous learners, we will not be able to certificate until we have required document, because we do get audited on the learners that we're certificating. We once had an audit finding where AG was saying, even if it's private learners, what guarantee do you have to say this particular learner is alive? So we have learners that are emanating from 2012 and until 2018, and it's as a result of the fact that we do not have supporting documents for us to be able to certificate those learners. But where we have supporting documents, we are working on that to make sure that all learners are certificated. Thank you.
Chair, there's just one compliment. Maybe I should just read it.
Thank you, Acting CEO and Acting CFO. Looking at the time, I wanted to suggest that we have about 10 minutes. And due to COVID restrictions, we've gone on with questions coming through chats. Something tells me that in the next 7 minutes, we can allow maybe 2 of our stakeholders to come in live. Then we can hear the sentiments and comments, either on the issues that have already been raised and the questions that have been raised, or any point that is new before we close. So we'll allow this opportunity for direct engagements, and it will be on the first come, first served basis. Thank you. We're taking, if there's a hand, can we just come in?
We have Tebogo Siteto.
Tebogo, would you like to come in, please?
Sitatu.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Osley, the acting CEO. Yeah, I was just saying, because of this is an AGM, thank you for allowing us to speak. We know that we are challenged, but this technology does allow us to speak. But just a quick one. I've got serious issues. I've always attended the stakeholder forums with Cathsseta, and even before the full qualification on intellectual property was removed. And the fact that Cathsseta is a custodian of capacity building and training in our sector, but Cathsseta seems not to be taking the issue of capacity building as seriously as they should. It's really going to kill the industry, especially coming from the creative industry point of view. You've got artists who are dying paupers daily. You've got, from whether they're actors or musicians, it's because of Cathsseta has not really taken the pain to say, how do we develop creatives? Because of this is the driver for their revenue, royalties and everything. In order for them to understand their contracts and how these things work, they've got to be capacitated around intellectual property. Now, as a stakeholder and a service provider who stands to be accredited for the first time by Cathsseta, by the way, which has taken a very long time because of the DAJO system. We've heard enough about the system, and I'm hoping that you will sort it out. I'm worried because we are worried to say, are we gonna get the support that is deserved? Because of what's the point of being accredited for such a qualification and you still don't get the support from the custodians themselves? So I really want to raise this thing sharply, and it has to be noted, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Debu. Are we gonna? Yeah, shall we then get another comment, please? If there's any other pending issue to be raised, I see a hand.
Stephen
Is it
Quinn.
still Debu's hand?
It's Stephen Quinn.
Stephen, would you please come in?
Yes, it's regarding the Cathsseta learnerships. As Cathsseta have confirmed that they're aware of all the system problems, have they thought of coming up with a manual process at this point so that employers can go ahead with the learnerships that they've requested? We have learners that were meant to be on learnerships 2 months ago. Because of the change in the system, we're now paying those learners for 2 months, which is costing the company lots of money, and yet we're still waiting for Cathsseta to approve those learners. What is the short-term solution for this problem? Because next March is too late. What's the short-term solution?
CEO, do you have a quick response to the short-term solution? Can you speak from where you are?
Thank you, Stephen. I think what we will do, I had requested Dimpo and the Dajo people to sit with you. Unfortunately, as a CETA, we used to implement our programs manually. And I think the reason we wanted the system was to automate our processes. And if now our policies and everything says we must automate, we will not be able to divert from that. But what we can do is to just sit with you and Dejo and make sure that we assist you to certificate your learners. Because we really will not be able to say we will do things out of the system. We have procured the system and we need to be using the system. I think what we will do, like I have alluded, we are doing change requests, and some of the issues of the elements that we are changing really came from you. I received an email, long email from you with challenges that you have identified. We then took those to Dajo to make sure that we improve the system. So what I will take upon myself is to make sure that maybe we have a list of all your learners and we sit with your team and Dajo to make sure that we assist you and you are certificated. Our service provider, Dajo, was invited to this meeting. I am thinking they also taking notes to make sure that all the queries that have been raised are closed, and they also improve from their end on issues that are raised, and make sure that they are prompt in their responses, because some of the issues that came out was issues of time management. Thanks.
Thank you, Acting CEO.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, everybody, for the informative engagements that have taken place. I would like to sum up a little bit now at this stage on the issues that have been ventilated in this conversation on behalf of the board. There are at least 4 seminal points that have been raised with regard to the ERP, the historical learners and the ETQK capacity, as well as the issue relating to the IP and capacity building. This is not to say there are no other matters, but this is to just pick out those 4 issues as the matters that are take home for the board that we're going to be looking at. I wish to assure the stakeholders that this board from inception has been seized with these matters, which is why we raised the matter relating to the ERP in the presentation that we made. I can attest at this point that of all the issues that have troubled us in the CETA, the matter of the organizational realignment, the 10.5%, the 7.5% over expenditure have occupied our minds endlessly and continue to do so to this date. And the issue of the ERP has also been a matter of our major concern and attention. As we speak, there is a meeting scheduled between the board and DAGIO. And also there has been, and I can share at this stage, that the board did indeed instruct executive management to go out and source an independent entity to come in and do an evaluative exercise or assessment of the work that we are getting from the service provider and the impact that it is having on our work. We have therefore sourced the services of CETA, the SITA, in regard to this exercise, and the board will be apprised pretty soon of the, if you like, understanding the mischief. What exactly is the mischief, so that as we resolve it, we are alerted to the fact that we are going to resolve it once and for all and not deal with the tiddly bits that are on the side with regards to this matter. I have also consulted with members of the board as we have been engaging in the last 35 minutes or so on this matter, and realized that with immediate effect, the board will set up a special board committee which will work with the incoming CEO as well as the acting CEO, Ms. Mpie, on a brief that has got 3 prongs in it. The first one is to engage with our stakeholders to fully understand and articulate the extent of the problem, understanding the mischief, as Minister Asmal used to say. The second one would be to raise suggestions on both short-term and medium to long-term resolutions. How do we address the immediate issues as well as how do we address mid to long-term challenges that we're experiencing? And thirdly, to provide advice and guidance to the board on actions towards breaking the current impasse and deadlock between the SETA and the service provider. We will therefore request our stakeholders, when approached on this matter, to please participate and avail yourselves on all the forms of engagement that this special committee of the board that will be set up and will be you'll be informed of in the next couple of days to ensure that we resolve this matter as speedily as we possibly can and make sure that all the issues are addressed. At this point, I'm going to request Mr. Moses Mota, who is the only other returning member of this board, to then pass a vote of thanks on behalf of the board of Cathsseta. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm tasked with a very simple
Mr.
task.
Mota, sorry, my apologies. Chair didn't address the IP issue. He acknowledged it, but he didn't address it. Sorry to disrupt. It's not with bad purpose.
I'm of the view that the 4 issues that I raised are matters that have been picked up and lifted for address and attention by the board. I do not think that this is the right platform to go and address each and every one of them. Neither do I think it would be desirable to do so. In that instance, therefore, I need to assure you, Debbie, that the matter is going to receive all due attention together with all the other 3 that it was lifted with. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Once again, thank you, Chairperson. I just said I've been tasked with a very noble task of expressing a word of thanks. One sage once said, when talking about word of thanks, he said, thanksgiving and articulating such is inextricably intertwined with humanity, and therefore we as Cathsseta are also bound by that wisdom to say we need to articulate our gratitude for those that have attended and graced this AGM. Let me express our greetings to the Cathsseta board members, our Cathsseta subcommittee members, CEOs and heads of departments that have joined us in our digital platforms, the Cathsseta acting CEO, Ms. Lebogang Mpye, our incoming CEO, Mr. Max Tibela, the Cathsseta executive management, our special guest, Dr. Kylie Montgomery, for her incisive talk and illuminating talk, training providers and our employer groups today, all protocol observed. Our distinguished guests, on behalf of the Cathsseta board, let me take this opportunity to thank you for joining us today on a very unfamiliar platform that we are slowly embracing. It is true that COVID-19 has forced our hands to be part of the 4th industrial revolution. I have a feeling that this is how the future looks like. This is how we are being ushered to the more technological advanced world. With that said, thank you for using your data or Wi-Fi to join us on the very first Cathsseta virtual event. Thank you so much. I believe that by now we have, we can call ourselves trailblazers under the harsh and necessary lockdown regulations. Technology and innovations really came through for us in order to achieve this task. Some of us, for the first time, were humbled ourselves to ask assistance from our sons, our daughters, who are always glued to their phones, to help us navigate this new virtual world. They know it better than us. So let us continue to invest in the youth as they have the potential to save our economy. They have ideas that will turn the economy around, of course, with your guidance. As the new board of Cathsseta, we are honored to be given this opportunity to work together with you in our mandate of skills development within our diverse sectors. It is wonderful to hear how Cathsseta has impacted the lives of young people and businesses within our scope. As challenging as this period has been for Cathsseta and its stakeholders, I am humbled by how you, our stakeholders, went through the call of duty to assist learners and your surrounding communities with the little you had. Let us continue to support government initiatives in minimizing the spread of coronavirus by adhering to the COVID-19 regulations at our workplaces. In this way, I believe that more lives will be saved. Before I conclude my talk, I also need to make a very special announcement to our stakeholders to announce that our regions have been realigned in line with the requirements to meet the 10.5 administrative cost in order to alleviate the costs that we have. And as a result, we are left with 3 subgroups of the regions. We have clustered the initially 11 regions that we had into 3. We have grouped Gauteng, Mpumalanga, and Limpopo, as well as Northwest, into 1 region. And we have also grouped all the Capes together, the Northern Cape and the Western Cape together as another region. And thirdly, we have also amalgamated KZN and the Free State in an effort to contain the contentious issue of the 10.5 cost administrative cap that we have been talking about today as one of the contentious issues. And lastly, I know that it is December and we want to sit back and relax with our families, but let us do so with caution. We do not want to be like other European countries that are back on strict lockdown. Let us try by all means not to have events that may be deemed as super spreaders. The future looks good with you and I alive and well. On this auspicious day, then, I want to take this opportunity to thank all our stakeholders who have contributed immensely to all our learning programs. Your work is commendable. To our stakeholders who raised their burning issues today, be rest assured that we heard your pleas and your recommendations, and we know that all your concerns come from your passion for the youth of our country. We thank you for keeping us updated with the developments taking place at your organizations, such as graduations and success stories. This is very inspirational. We thank you because it is your story that lets the world know that South Africa has great women and men who wake up every day to ensure that this country doesn't stand still, but keeps on moving. We thank each and every one of you who, together with Cathsseta, are committed to skills development. To conclude, thank you, Acting CEO, for making sure that the ship sails under the circumstances. Thank you for organizing this event together with your team. Thank you for your flexibility in accommodating the requests from the board. I also want to thank all Cathsseta board and subcommittees, as well as staff, for availing themselves for this virtual AGM. Please stay safe, sanitize, and maintain social distancing. Ngiyaleboga, ngiyabonga, cancer, ngiyathokoza. Thank you.
After that capable and eloquently presented vote of thanks, there can be no additional word whatsoever. One last round of applause for Mr. Moko, please. Thank you, Mr. Moko. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Colleagues, we are in this together. Our country needs each one of us. With the 43% unemployment rate, it is our responsibility to change the situation for the better for our youth and every living soul in our country and all those still to come. At this stage, I would like to once again say thank you to everybody. Acting CEO, I thought you had something to say. Okay. So any of the questions that may have been closed out, CEO says, acting CEO says, they are welcome to post them on the chat room and we will indeed address them as we go. Mine was to then say, I have the pleasure of declaring this meeting closed. Thank you.